So why don't we get started? Excellent. All right. So it's 7 p.m. on Thursday, October 27th. I'd like to call the Town Council Strategic Planning meeting to order. Councilors Eric Moore and Dennis Gallagher are present. We're expecting Kevin Perry to join us, but we can move ahead with what we have because we have quorum. And then we're also joined by the town's Community and Economic Development Director for part of the discussion. The meeting will be conducted remotely via Zoom pursuant to Section 20 of Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, an act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency. This meeting for the town of Bridgewater will be fully remote and accessible to the public through remote participation to the greatest extent possible. There will be no in-person attendance permitted, and citizens who wish to tune into the meeting may do so via Zoom. Just a reminder to anybody participating or watching this after, all documents shared during this meeting are public information and available by sending an email request to me, and my email is available on the town website. Okay, so why don't we go ahead and get started. The first item on our agenda is meeting minutes. We don't have any meeting minutes, so I think we can move ahead to public comments. We do not have anyone from the public on, I believe. I think we've let everyone in. So we will move on to the next agenda item. And I'd actually like to make a motion to take item E, discussion, out of order. So we can talk about the master plan implementation.
Sure, I'll make that motion.
Great, I'll second. We'll do a roll call vote. Dennis?
Yes.
I'm also a yes. Motion passes. So we'll take that out of order. So maybe if we could just kick it off, maybe with a discussion with you, Jennifer, and maybe you, Dennis. I think you've come across the master plan before. I do have some ideas on maybe how we handle it, but I was wondering, Jennifer, if there's any additional introduction you want to give to us about the master plan and maybe the expectations for strategic planning in that process.
I guess I really don't have any additional introduction to the master plan and happy to answer specific questions if you guys have them about the plan in total. I guess I would just say in regards to the expectations or the thought process behind strategic planning, I guess, would be, so I sent you, or had Deborah sent you the implementation chapter in an Excel spreadsheet and a Word document so that you could manipulate it in any way that you saw fit or make notes or however you saw fit, because I thought that would be helpful to you. But I guess the thought would be to take a look at the recommendations of implementing the master plan with an eye toward, what are the goals for the council and the town as a whole in the upcoming calendar year. I talked with Michael a little bit today about should we do this fiscally or calendar, and he thought because we're so close to the end of the calendar year, we should maybe kick it off for the calendar year of 2023, especially with you guys having a election in January. That might be, a good place to start as well. So that's what we were thinking. I have some ideas, but I think I would probably want you guys to go first because, this really is your baby. I'm just here to do the work. So,
hey, Kevin. Welcome.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Didn't miss anything.
Oh, good.
Didn't miss anything. Didn't miss too much. Shouldn't say you didn't miss anything. You missed it.
So I guess I did have maybe some questions, just very high at the maybe strategic level, about implementing this sort of plan. So I was kicking around just a couple different approaches that I think a town could take, and they're based on just my own history doing budget planning in a corporate setting. So they may or may not be relevant, but the way that we typically, or the way that I've done budget planning and strategic planning and goal setting in a corporate environment is you start with a list kind of like this, right? What does everyone want to do? And then you get a little bit of guidance on which of these things thematically are most important. So it might not be a specific row, but you might say downtown is important in our case, or water is important, like that. And then the teams from there sort of sit down and they create a strategic plan for that. So it's, what is the goal? What are the actions that we think are achievable with our budget next year? And then that turns into like a plan that gets presented to leadership for like review and approval. So it's not just a set of priorities independent of budget. It's a set of priorities that are turned into an action plan that fits the budget. And so I guess as I'm thinking about a role that we could play, or maybe the roles in the town, to me, an approach for this is to say, this is now an important document for the town. And as part of our budget planning process, which we'll talk a little bit on the calendar portion of the agenda, we would expect the town departments and leaders to, with a little bit of guidance from us on themes, but we'd expect the town to turn this into an action plan that is tied to a budget. Because I think us saying we want to do number 1, 2, and 3, and then there's like no money for it doesn't really help.
Right. So I think you're right. I think the only thing I would just say to that is I think this is your action plan, because some of these are pretty specific actions. But I think you're right. I think it has to be tied to a budget, obviously. I mean, some of them are no cost or very low cost, so I don't think that's a problem, but there are some pretty expensive items in here, or could get pretty expensive items, not just cost wise, but there's some that's going to involve some staff time, and that always is a cost factor. So I think probably the best idea, or a good idea, might be to go over a theme, or what are sort of general. So Michael, I guess I'll just say it. I was trying to not give you my 2 cents, and I didn't want to sway you, but I guess so. Michael and I have talked a little bit, and we feel that downtown and economic development are sort of the key goals that we would be looking to focus on in the next year going forward, is revitalizing the downtown and working on some economic development initiatives. And so I've looked at this with an eye to that, and I've highlighted some things that I think would help with that. I've also looked at some of the stuff that we're already doing in the course of our everyday lives, or just in general, and said, okay, well, we're already doing this, so we're going to continue to do this, or we're going to do it in a different way, or we're going to ramp it up a little bit. So that's the way I looked at this, and I'm willing to share some of those thoughts with you. But so I think and yes, I think you're right. We've got to come up with that concept before we then turn it back to the department heads or the boards and committees that would be in charge, or whoever, to then say, okay, here's what we're thinking. How does this fit into your work plan, your budget, your staffing levels, all of those things?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Dennis.
I don't disagree that the downtown is, I mean, I know we're not really kind of setting priorities here, but the downtown is in need of a lot of TLC, if you will. But you're right, it's going to cost money. I don't know in this particular goal or objective that the police department, for example, would need to increase their budget because we are revitalizing the downtown. I don't think the fire department would need, to revise their budget to accommodate that or anything like that. That's more of a capital issue, sort of. And then, we go from there. Would you, so that's one element of that, but I think that should be a goal. And I'm eager to see a plan as to, okay, how do we implement the traffic study report that was done, the downtown, development study that was done, and then the master plan, how does it all fit in? What can we do as a town to change our downtown look to attract the businesses? I mean, are we ever going to see Broad Street develop? There's Perkins, I don't even know where Perkins Foundry, if that's even in where they are with that project. What are we going to do with the fire station when it closes and the new one opens up? Things like that. So I do think that's a lot of undertaking, Eric, and that would take a lot of focus from the town officials to do that. Whether we are ever going to move go two ways on one side of the common, I don't know, but So-
just to touch upon that, guys, I met with Michael earlier this morning, and through the downtown revitalization subcommittee, we're planning a meeting in a few weeks to get together with the police chief, fire chief, highway chief, and the committee to talk about step one, what is the plan? What plan are we going with? What traffic design are we going with? To get that ball rolling, because you really can't do anything else until you kind of decide on the design of the common, what's the best way to go. So we're gonna get all their inputs and see if we can start on that. And then from there, I think you can build layers on the next thing to do. So again, now using the updates to the master plan and certainly the downtown plan that was developed, I mean, we're taking all that information to help make those decisions to go forward. So that subcommittee, I think, is going to work closely with strategic planning to come together with some plans in the coming months. That's hopefully going to be actionable steps that we'll be able to take.
Good.
Yeah, that seems to me like the better path, because I think, just in my experience, that the things that are most likely to fail are the groups that have a list like this and try to do it all, right? And I think the things that I've seen be really successful are the ones that are actually willing to prune and say something. I'm making this up, so don't react to it, but say something like, we actually aren't going to focus on the town landing this year because we need everyone focused on the downtown revitalization. Like, this is the year for downtown revitalization. And the plan for that is through the subcommittee. They will look at all of the information, make a recommendation to us, and ultimately that'll be flowed into the budget, and we will make sure that we're taking actions that are affordable to us, right? Or maybe it's, for me, water or something else, but that's sort of what I'm thinking. And that's where I'm a little nervous about us saying, like, I pick item A37A, like upgrade traffic signals. Like, maybe that's right. Maybe that's the best thing we need. I have no idea how much it costs. I don't know what other project doesn't get done because I pick it. So I like the idea of there being like this filtering thing, like you just described, Kevin, where there's a group of people that are like they're looking at this, they're using this as an input, but they're building a plan for progress that we can prioritize that, like
Certain
prioritize.
things have to be done first before, like the small detail stuff, like you're just saying. You're not going to go and make changes to lights and whatever when you don't even know the design of the streets at this point in time. So
Exactly.
I get the big plan in first as far as the design goes, and then you can kind of pick and choose the smaller stuff to add to the mix. And then you're right, like you said, formulate a budget from there, and then how do we get that into the yearly budget to afford those changes. So I think, again, a lot of our work going forward, at least in revitalization, is going to depend on the subcommittee work I'm doing with that, with Bill and Peter. So again, we had one meeting so far a couple weeks ago, walking the center with Jennifer. So our next step, like I said, is to do a meeting with the different public safety heads and highway heads, just to kind of, talk about the options and what's it going to take to get these steps done. I mean, we got to go through state approval because of the highway that runs through the common. We're going to, cobblestone one side, make it slow traffic. These are all the options that's going to affect businesses and affect, everything it's going to do around that area. And as I was talking with Jen at the time too, of that meeting is the next step would be to get all the business owners of the buildings in the center of town together once we have kind of a plan, and then figure out, what they can do, what we can do to help them make improvements, and so on and so forth. So, but it's got to start with the basic plan coming off the master plan and coming off of the revitalization plan, and make a decision and go with it.
But I agree with everything. Oh, sorry, Eric.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, Jeff.
No, I agree with everything that you guys have said. The only thing I would just note is that in the spreadsheet that I've given you from the implementation plan, if you note under time frame, there are near-term, midterm, and long-term goals, right? So some of those near-term goals are very like low-hanging fruit, I guess what we would call low-hanging fruit. They're pretty easy, short-term things that could show the public that we are making progress on the master plan. You know, a lot of people's concern when we were doing the plan was that it's just gonna be another book that sits on a shelf. And, you know, I really don't want that to happen. It's gonna be my goal to make sure that does not happen. I am going to push hard to do as much of this, obviously not all in 1 year, but do as much of this as we can do throughout my tenure here. And some of it, you know, like as an example, 822B, you know, schedule and promote monthly zoning 101 drop-in hours for members of the public to ask town staff zoning related questions. Like that's something we can do, no cost to the town. Me and my staff can have, you know, after hours, you know, drop in, people can come after work if they have zoning questions about their property or want to show us a plan that they might be thinking about, you know, people that can't get there during the week or something like that, or just have general questions about how zoning works in town. So like, that's good, the kind of stuff that we can easily pick off and work on and just sort of make part of our everyday routine going forward. So those are also the kinds of things that in conjunction with the downtown and that kind of stuff, I'm looking at those kinds of things too.
Yeah. And I guess from my perspective, it makes sense. And I love the idea of, you know, the kind of like the low hanging fruit, making progress. I think, you know, for me, the absolute best solution would be probably you, Jen, like for each of these sections in the back that have recommendations, I would love to see an actual like plan. So if you have 3 hours in the afternoon, at least right now, I feel like we just have to get like the basics back like on track. And the basics are, you know, for each of these items, how much does it cost? Do we have the staff to do it? What comes first? What comes second? Which things take 5 years and which things take 2 years? And it's really just like, what is the, rather than us pick individual actions, it's what is, you know, the big picture approach for, I'm going to pick something here, but transit. Like what is our 3-year plan for transit? And then you would sit down and say, okay, and I'm gonna look through these things. I'm also gonna take into account all the other things I've heard and I pick up during the day and work with DPW and we're gonna actually create a 3-year plan. And then that's something the council could react to and say, yeah, it makes sense. It looks affordable. You know, maybe I want to tweak this. Can you consider that? But I think that like that's the strategy side of this to me is how do you take these and turn them, for me, it's a 3-year horizon. Others it might be different, but how do you turn it into like truly like a 3-year best guess on what you think you can get done year 1, year 2, year 3? How are we going to fund it? How are we going to make sure that by year 3 we've done all the things we needed to do to get those things done? So that's really what I would love to see, is with guidance on which things to work on first, like a plan on how to do this. Sorry, Dennis, go ahead.
Right, Eric. No, and I think that's perfect. And I think that and I know pretty much it's fair to say anything we want to do is going to cost money, right? Isn't
Yeah, or time, which is just as valuable with our staff,
So,
right?
But you have, I think a key indicator is really the capital plan that is out there. And I think there is right now a capital plan that goes out to 2025, which is, you know, 3 years, 2 to 3 years. And that gets revised all the time. And I think that, you know, when the town manager comes to us and wants money put into all these capital things like we had last year, like 1.7 million for various projects, I think we have to, at that point, as a council, or even is say, okay, how do these capitals needs that he wants to have appropriation for fit into the strategic plan? Are we veering away from it? Are we creating something different? You know, obviously there's capital needs of equipment that constantly need to be replaced. That's different. But how, you know, if, you know, is he going to ask for capital money to you do some minor repairs to the common, you know, is that step one? Or, you know, and is he gonna be asking for some monies to appropriate to do some work with the river, the park system? Is that a step? So those are the things I look for, is when he asks for capital money, not so much the items that replace old equipment, but you know, what can we use that capital money for? Roads, you know, he wants to repair a lot of roads, and we all want the roads in the town to be repaired. And I'm not quite so sure a debt exclusion is the route to go for the taxpayer. You know, there could be a constant flow of money into capital, and every year the plan would be to use some capital money in addition to the Chapter 90 monies and state aid to fix some roads. So, you know, but I think a key indicator would look at that capital plan and say, what is in that 3-year capital plan, and how does it fit some of these goals and objectives we want to achieve?
Yeah, I think that's a great observation, Dennis. That's because I know for me coming in, you read through that and you say, yeah, all these things sound like good things, but to your point, you know, what big objective are we moving towards, and are we spending our money on the right thing? And then I think on the other side, you expected to see something. We had heard that something was happening, and all of a sudden there's no money. We could ask about that too, because we see a gap between what's being promised and like what's being funded. So I think that's for me, like, I would love us to get into this routine where, you know, we have maybe this rolling 3-year plan to match the capital plan, where every year we sort of focus on what's in the plan for next year, but we're always talking about like the next 2. So we know if we spend the money now or sign up for this new building thing now, that means 2 years from now, the money's not going to be there for that other big project.
Exactly. And I've been around a while, and I know, you know, Jen's got a lot of experience too. The beauty of what's happening here in Bridgewater right now is we have all these fresh reports that are fairly new, and we have money. I'm not saying we're rolling in dough, but we've got a good reserve account right now where we can implement some of these things. In the past, we've gotten all these fresh reports, and all of a sudden the economy tanks and we have to spend all that money just to survive the regular budget. We're in a different place right now. Not that in 2 or 3 years that could all change. We know that. But for what we're dealing with right now, we have some leverage. The fact that we have built up our reserves, we have invested in these reports, we've identified the areas in town that we want to see, you know, improvement on. So I think we're in a good spot right now. In 3 years from now, we might not be.
Yeah, I think that's a great observation. So I think that's my hope, and kind of be able to do what you're talking about, Dennis and Jen. I think what you're describing too is, like, I think all of us we know the priorities. I think in general, we hear about them, the same priorities all the time. And then we know we want to take action on this. So I think the missing piece then is what Dennis is describing, is like, what is that strategy that we can use to make sure we're approving the money for it? We're checking to make sure that we're not spending money in the wrong places. For us as counselors, you know, we can go out and tell people why we're not doing something and why we're really behind this other thing, because, you know, we kind of know what the big picture is. I think that's much easier than like picking things. And I'm going to use the crosswalk in the center of town as an example. I don't know if it's a good one, but I'm sure that's on a list somewhere, and someone said this is a good thing to do, and it's happening. And all of a sudden it happens. Everyone's like, well, why? Like, what's it part of? And, you know, I don't like the way it's done. And like no one's prepared to react to it. Right. Like,
Yeah.
So it's I don't know. That's my thinking,
That's
Jen.
true.
You know,
That's true, though. You're right. I didn't know there was an issue with a crosswalk, and there was a rationale that we don't need that particular crosswalk anymore. I don't know what minds were behind that. I'm not an expert enough to have done that analysis to say, yeah, we don't really need that one, but it was a shock, I think, to a lot of people.
Yeah, me too. And then I think that's time and money and effort, and I'm certainly not looking to manage or second guess that one, but I think we add value by just kind of helping to make sure that that's part of a bigger vision that, that everyone's sort of like behind, right?
Yeah, so I think, I wasn't part of that decision either. I mean, I knew it was happening, but I wasn't part of the decision to do it, I guess. But the one thing I will say though, and I think this is a big part of where you guys can be helpful too, is like, people just don't like change in general, typically, right? So any change is going to be hard for some people or a lot of people or most people. So by doing this process and getting it out there at a council meeting and when you're meeting with people and your constituents, the education piece of it, I think, is important, and say, these are the things that the vision, these are the things that we're talking about are helpful. Now, obviously that one is a little bit behind the 8 ball, but, but moving forward, I think you're right. Like if we, start having these conversations in a bigger manner and start saying, okay, these are the things that we're going to be doing, that's when people need to start hearing about them, not as the truck is pulling up the,
Yeah, right. I think I talk about change management and surprise management.
Exactly.
Those are 2 totally different things.
Exactly.
Change management you can plan, surprise management you can't. So
exactly.
Yeah. So, but I think we're saying the same thing. I think that the idea is, how do we take some of these ideas, sort of run them through the right process and end up with some plans? And
Well,
Jen, is this something that like the town is already doing? Like, is there a plan that is there maybe a framework we should start, or is there a framework we should fit into?
I think it's probably a little bit of both, and I know that's hard to say, but I think, to Dennis's point, the capital plan is already a framework, right, that we use and that we have, and we'll fit that into this. But I think, previous master plans that we had were pretty much, implemented as best they could be by citizen volunteers, primarily Dr. Hunt. You didn't have a lot of staff at the time doing that work. Now you have a pretty robust planning or community economic development department. I mean, obviously we can always use more people, but we have a pretty decent amount of staff at the moment. And I think now is the time for us to maybe come up for you with a framework to do that and include the capital plan process as part of that. I mean, every department takes part in that capital planning process. I guess when I do my capital planning now, it will include these pieces. I can start that earlier now, obviously, and get those things going on. But what I was going to suggest is maybe, I don't know, do you guys meet regularly, or do you guys just meet as needed?
We can do either. So there hasn't been a whole lot, but I mean,
Yeah.
we could put a regular schedule in.
Because I was just thinking, like, if you give me a little bit of time, I can do, what you suggested. I don't know that I can come up with a full plan for each of the items. I think that's a lot of work that I don't have time to do at the current moment, but I can certainly come up with some sort of maybe outline or guideline.
Even like baby steps. So it's just like,
Yeah.
Next year we think we can do this, and then we'll look at it and we'll say, okay, like,
right. And then
the following year we'll do a little bit more, but
and then work on the capital plan pieces of it and see, some of these things may already be in the capital plan. I can note that. I can get some, if things are, a cost, I can get the costs out to you. I can let you know what staff would be involved. So if you give me a little bit of time, maybe 3 weeks-ish, I can probably get that, something like that done for you guys.
Yeah, I'd be curious to hear what others think, but I would love to see that. And we don't have to have the ultimate solution now. We just have to have like the right next solution. Like, let's just kind of get something started. And then I think what we can do is maybe give some guidance around maybe some areas of focus there. I think, through the goals process, we could highlight a couple of things, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Dennis or Kevin, is there anything else you wanted to add before we move on?
Well, I think that as far as the first issue we talked about, the downtown, I mean, the downtown revitalization committee's is meeting to, they'll be coming forward with a plan in the near future. So that's something that will, I mean, when it comes out, and maybe we can have a joint meeting with them or something before it goes to the council, or if it gets referred out or whatever, that would be a great step. So, I mean, I think the other thing too is, I know you put it together, Eric. I looked, I know I have it here somewhere. I got all kinds of paper here, but you put together all these outstanding things.
Yeah, my tracker.
The track, you go.
I learned that I'm not allowed to present that in meeting because of open meeting law, but
Oh,
yeah,
but
but we'll
no,
get
I
there.
thought that was great. I mean, there are so many things, as you know, there's so many things out there that have been talked about. Like we've been, the mobile station has been an issue for 5 years now. Where is it? What's gonna, I mean, I know Sean George wants that on the agenda next time to find out where that's been out there. So, the tracker is a good idea to say, okay, something does get presented. I'm not saying it gets lost, but sometimes, it's our responsibility to hold the town manager accountable and say, hey, where is this now? We forget. Sometimes we forget. Oh God, yeah, I forgot about that. And it's just out there, And there, as you know, there are some, not that it's part of strategic planning, but there are the charter changes that are still out there. The NIP legislation is still out. There's a lot of things on the tracker, not so much that they pertain to strategic planning, but some of them do.
Yeah.
And
I
that could play a key role on what we do.
I could put that, the tricky thing, just for awareness, is we have to actually list every single item that's on the tracker on the agenda and give people the opportunity to talk about it. That's the tricky thing, which we could do.
We do long meeting.
Yeah. So that's just the balancing there. But I think you're right. We could track a couple of them, maybe the highest priority ones, Dennis, and talk about those. But okay. So I think that's
Speaking to your point, real quick, Eric, was just the fact that, I mean, if we target maybe just a once a month meeting, that gives Jennifer a target to pull together, like you say, the outlines that you're looking for, that we can kind of take one step at a time, hit that meeting, then, okay, next step, create another outline, create the next step, but just have a nice sequential, orderly meeting once a month that won't be too overbearing for anybody, but hopefully, gets us on a consistent track that's going to get something accomplished.
perfect. I can set that up. I like the idea of that. And then Jennifer, we can be a partner, a sounding board, right? Whatever you need to kind of get that idea going.
Perfect. And I just wanted to note too that I am also working with the downtown committee on that plan too. So that will be a good, connection there as well to work with you guys and them. Yeah, no, as is Dr. Perry, but as from the staff point of view, that would be a good connection, to keep you both, sort of abreast. So
Perfect. Right, that's great. And I did notice, even in reading through the master plan, there are lots of like layers on things. So like paving, and then another report has a thing about redesigning that same kind of intersection. Another one has something about bikes being put in there. So it's just like bringing all that together and just saying, okay, how do we like tackle this thing? All right, so
I know.
yeah, not easy, but doable if we start small, right? So,
Yep.
All right, so maybe if I move on to the next agenda item, which is establishing town goals. I think this ties in. I'm going to share a document here. I did pre-populate, but we can change, edit, delete. I just did a little bit of a brain dump ahead of time. So this was the ordinance that or the order that I put in front of the council. It was handed to us essentially blank. And so I just started going through and kind of brainstorming the things that I think are high on priority, or things that have come up in counselor comments, those sorts of things. So I thought maybe what I could do is just run through at a high level what I've captured, and then you guys can delete, suggest edits, etc. Does that sound okay? All right. So the first one I had is actually out of the master plan, and there's just a recommendation that on an annual basis, we look at the zoning and make sure that it's updated. And when we get to the calendar, I think there's a point in the year where we know enough about what we want to do the following year that we could use that as an input to zoning changes. So I just put that in as a goal, like have an annual zoning review. This next one is actually, I think I'll tweak it to reflect what we just talked about, but this is the idea of having an annual strategic plan that gets prepared. I did think that we should put in a goal about status updates to the town council. I think we get them sporadically, and I think we just need to really prioritize the need for us to know what's happening in the town. We've talked a lot about communication, so I thought one potential goal could be that the council president takes on ownership of every couple of weeks, preparing something that can go out to the community through Facebook or get posted on the website. So that's a potential goal. The annual committee training program, that was also in the master plan. But I was thinking, if we have this concept of a strategic plan and budget that gets updated every year, and we've weighed in on it, it might be good to combine that with open meeting law training and things like that into an annual training where we make sure that all of the committees have heard the same strategic goals every year. Everyone kind of gets the update. And then they also get like the latest training. These are my own personal ones. Both of you know I talk about PFAS and brown water a lot. I think we're expecting to see changes next year. So I was proposing, something to just monitor the impact of the new treatment plan on brown water. And then I would like to see a plan for PFAS. I know it's expensive. I know there's a lot of different challenges there, but I would love for us to just get to the point where we know what it costs and how we would address it if we wanted to. And then I think I've heard Michael talk about a roadways plan and what that would cost. This was my bullet essentially for downtown revitalization. Michael had talked about a data collection system so we could have more visibility into our response to issues in the town. And then we had the fire station. And so I think there's a lot there, but that was just my initial brain dump. Are there any things that you expected to see and didn't see and don't want, would like to change? I think at a highlight this sort of, or at a high level, this prioritizes annual zoning, strategic planning, communications, water, and downtown revitalization.
Oh, that's fine. I like that.
Going back to the top, Eric, should,
Yeah, sure. Can you see that
Jennifer?
okay? Do you need me to zoom in or anything? I can't tell.
no, I
I
can
can
see
see
it
it.
pretty good.
Okay, great.
Should the annual zoning review include Jennifer as well as far as responsible party?
Yes. Is that the right abbreviation, Jennifer? CD?
Yes.
All right,
Yeah.
perfect.
I think that would be definitely. Going back down to the one that you wanted from the town council president. I mean, it's not a bad idea. I just think, it is putting a lot of extra physical work, but maybe in conjunction with the town council secretary, maybe might be something that could help out the president with that.
Yeah.
At least, they can collaborate and
Sure.
It's a
help
council
write it
clerk,
on up.
council clerk.
Sorry.
Yeah, that's council clerk, I'm sorry. That's just the first two that kind of jumped out at me. As far as the PFAS removal, I mean, great. I think I believe our levels, even though it's detectable in our water, we're still, most of the times testing under the, even at a low level that compared to other areas and what their minimum levels are. But as far as the ability to remove it, I'm not even sure how that goes. So.
Yeah, I think just for some background on this, Michael's given his update on the PFAS. So occasionally it spikes. there was a question of if we wanted to remove it, what would that cost? Like what,
Right.
like remove it entirely, like just kind of get it off the conversation. And so Michael had said that would take some studying and kind of additional investment. So that's what I was hoping to just,
Right. Like I said, my concern is, number one, is it completely removable? At what cost? And are we still mostly relatively at safe enough levels that it shouldn't be, do we need to go to that level? I think the bigger concern is just the brown water, which we know how much iron and other minerals are in our water. So if we have the appropriate filtration systems in place with all the new stuff that's coming online with the water, then I think that'll be much more easier to address.
so if, Kevin, if I change this one, instead of like developing a plan, it's really like understand.
I would
I
say
guess maybe
understand
options
PFAS control and monitoring, I would say, as opposed to just removal. Control and monitoring, yeah. I think that would be a more ideal description of dealing with PFAS.
Yeah. Okay. And I'll tweak this. Any other suggestions or things that are not on here that you would expect to see?
Like to just think about perhaps the park system, I don't know, something I think the town needs is to, like the Stiles and Hart property we acquired, or that land that we acquired for $500,000. I mean, that was a couple years ago. And now that the town river landing is being cleaned up, well, with volunteers at the moment, I'd like to see some paths cut out, some paths cut out so people can actually walk in there. So
that's
something like that, and the smaller one, are we going to be responsible for starting the town manager's review, or is that done through the review committee? I don't know.
I do have it on my calendar.
Okay.
but
I don't think it needs to be on this. I just didn't know if that was,
yeah.
we have to supposedly do that annually, and we're always under the gun to get it done by the annual.
By the time we need to do it, there's an election that changes the makeup of it.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. I can look into that one.
And we're definitely going to have 2 new counselors at least.
Yeah. So Dennis, for the town landing one, is there a specific set of accomplishments you want to make sure are in there, or is it more like we want to see a plan for the town landing? What's being done? How much does it cost?
Yeah, like the same in Stiles and Hart and the Town River Landing abut each other. And there has been a lot of emphasis on the Stiles and Hart I think we're requiring some land off of 18 where the cutout is to put some parking in there or something. But then, so once you get that, I don't know how the paths look, whether they're overgrown, whether it's full of poison ivy. I don't know how the paths are in there, but I guess there are paths cut out already in there, but I don't know how sustainable, or how overgrown they might be, or this thing like that. But that trail system can talk or connect with the Town River Landing. Now there is more parking right now. The Town River Landing is more available space for people to walk in there, but there was a piece of legislation filed the last session for $150,000 grant to build a bridge, because you can't go into the Town River Landing, to need a bridge to walk over the river. You can launch your boat, I guess, out of there, but I still think it needs some cleaning up. So that didn't pass. That didn't go anywhere. The 150,000 just kind of died. It's good, worth the effort, but I know the gentleman that spoke to us Tuesday night. I guess it sounds like they're gonna rip up all the tar and put gravel down. So, I mean, it's quite aggressive, so. So the park systems, we heard a little bit about the playground the other night, not that that's part of the park system, but it's part of, something that's lacking in the town of Bridgewater, or things for the children or kids to do. The other playground was torn down, the skateboard was shut down. It's like we need to kind of, we have these park systems and we need to kind of,
There isn't a way to maintain them and to police them for trash and all that type of stuff as we're.
That's a big, you're right, it's
talking about last meeting.
a big issue, trash, right?
Right, we need a system in place to at least monitor picking up trash, to, like I say, maintain and repair damaged equipment. We do have the Rainbow's End space, as you're alluding to, Dennis. What are we doing with that? Are we gonna go with the dog park that was talked about a few years ago over in that section of town? So, I mean, I know Kitty Doherty's involved in a lot of this, wildlife and park stewardship and stuff. So maybe a combination of, if she's still involved, to get her input, or have her talk with the town manager and come up with some reports on that. She's the.
But
I-
right now,
I
if
can-
you want, if you want to
I
go
was
for
just
a
saying,
walk
I can-
right now, go
I
ahead.
can give you an update on Thousand Heart right now if you want that specifically. I mean, I think
let's hold off just because it's
Yeah.
not fully on the
that's totally fine, but at any point. if you
But
guys
actually, I
want
think
an
what I'm
update-
hearing is, this sounds like a great piece of information on the strategic plan that we're talking about. So I think if we're prioritizing, we would like to know about the parks, we would like to know about the downtown and water. Like, I think it sounds like those are probably maybe the big three for next year. Does that sound right?
Yeah, I think you're gonna see in the capital budget, something about the park system, I think, and, or at least a piece of it. The dog park should be coming up soon too, so we'll get to that, but that's years away probably, but.
And then Jennifer, maybe I'll reach out to Michael too, but if we could put on the town council agenda, just maybe a quick update on the parks, just so we can hear it.
But specifically Thousand Heart.
Yeah, or I mean, if there's other updates too, but specifically that one, yeah.
Okay.
Thanks. Okay, just a quick look at time. I know we are trying to end by 8. That gives us about 10 minutes. Do you think this is okay to go back to the council with and get additional information, or should we look
Yeah,
at
I
it?
do.
Sorry, Kevin, what was that, or Dennis?
Just roll back up to the top, just want to
Yeah.
see if there's anything important up top to review there. Even go all the way, okay, so just establishing town goals is basically what this
Yeah,
is. And this
the
is
only
town
thing I
goals
tweaked
for-
is, yeah, it originally said just from the master plan, so I just said town council developed goals. I added
Right.
that.
And what time frame are we looking for these goals here? Is there an established time frame here?
These are all for completion before the end of FY '24. So these are inputs into planning and budget for FY '24.
Okay.
Do you
Well, I
want me to
think
put
you
that in
gotta-
there?
you want it to be, something attainable, so I don't want thinking, like you say, you want to make a list that's too extensive. But I think what you've got is hitting a lot of the major, points.
But are these necessarily in priority? Or are these like the priorities? Like,
Good.
is the top one number one and Styles and
It
Hart?
wasn't.
I think
mean-
you're probably bumping the new fire station up closer to the top there.
I mean, the fire station we know is gonna happen. There's nothing,
Yeah,
there's nothing, that's gonna stop that other than construction costs going through the roof. I mean, or delay it anyway, but, I guess
Well,
I don't have a problem with this list, and I don't have a problem with the priority. I just think some other councils might wanna, will
Yeah,
ask
no,
that question and say, is the annual zoning review number one? Not
I can
necessarily.
reorder it if, at least to me, the downtown is the number one priority.
I agree.
So if we put
Uh,
that
do we want to include, or do we want to make separate the reuse of the old town hall? Because that's, we obviously are transitioning over with the new fire station, and we can make a change
Yeah.
there. Is it its own animal, or are we gonna lump it in with downtown revitalization? I think it should
Right.
potentially be its own animal.
I don't think you
Yeah,
need to I don't really think you need to put these in priority order. I think they need to all be working the same time. Because some, like you say, some of these things are just gonna happen,
Okay.
but some of these things are gonna require, roll up the sleeves and let's figure out how to do this.
Yeah.
So I'll move downtown just to the top just for optics, but then I won't put in any other priority.
Right.
I'll remove the priority column.
Yeah.
Um, anything else?
Christmas lights, where are we gonna put the Christmas lights?
What color are they gonna
Not
be?
touching that
I'm
one.
working on it. I'm working on it.
All
But
right.
just what I was saying, guys, what are your thoughts on the reuse of the town hall?
Kevin, I actually think, at least based on the research I did, it was good, effective revitalization efforts have an anchor destination, like a music hall or a performance place or something that like pulls people in on a regular basis. So
you
I would
think
love
we
to
lumped in
see,
with the revitalization.
yeah, and just you guys make a recommendation on, if and how that fits into the strategy there.
Okay, that's fine. I just didn't know if it should just be its own animal or separated from that. But that's fine. I think it could be, incorporated into that still. I'm just trying to think if there's anything else on the goals that we should throw in there, but think of anything else, Dennis, that should be on the goal list?
Oh, I think it's a good proposal. I think that, there are obviously many other things that some others might bring up, but I think these are the ones I think that we've been throwing around for several years now, and
Mhm.
and I think that that's pretty good.
Okay.
I think it's a good start, and depending on the councils have any input on it, we can take it at the meeting, so.
Yeah.
So then I guess I would entertain a motion to refer this. Well, actually, do I make a motion to amend with these amendments first and then refer? I think that's what we do.
But we never voted for the document. That you created the document, so that we're just creating the document.
So we're
The,
just, so
the
we're reviewing
original
the
was
document
actually-
as written, and we've made some edits, but,
Right.
we can certainly make a motion to submit the
As
document
as
edited
amended. Perfect.
Yeah.
back to the town council for review.
I'll second the motion.
All right, we'll do a roll call vote. Dennis,
Yes.
Kevin,
Yes.
and I am also a yes. Motion passes 3-0, 3 in favor, 0 against. All right, then the last thing, really quick, let me see if I can squeeze it in, is the calendar. I've also made some changes to this. But let me sort of, at a high level, set the stage for what I was hoping to use this for. And then you get some guidance on whether or not I've got the right stuff in there for it. So the thinking on this was to limit it really to the strategic planning steps. So how do we as a town get input about what we want to do the next year, use that to set goals, use that to set a plan, use that to set a budget, approve the budget, and then communicate it out to the rest of the town. And then ultimately, how do we then evaluate the town manager's performance against that, the execution of that. That was sort of my thinking. And this year's a little hard because I sort of ignored the first months because we've already passed them. So I tried to kind of squeeze a lot of that stuff into the remaining months. So maybe if I could just sort of talk through at a high level what it is. Essentially, it's a fiscal year view, July to June, with a few things just called out so people know when they happen. So town council meetings are in gray. I invented the meeting dates for next year. I don't think we've picked them yet, but maybe assume that those are them. I put on the calendar the dates where we're expecting an update from the town manager, because I actually want to make that a measurable goal so we can look at that and say, did we get something on that date? I put in the federal holidays, those are the pinks. And then the ones that I think are important from a strategic perspective are these things that are highlighted in yellow. And to put things on there, I looked at our charter and found meetings that are required by the charter. And then I tried to layer in a couple of other, I think, important discussions or activities that we do. So maybe just walking through from now through the rest of the fiscal year. I thought that there was probably a good to have the annual milestone of finalizing the goals, essentially what we just did. And right now the target for that is try to do that by the 25th, essentially by the end of November. And then from there, we are required every year to have 2 public input meetings. And my thinking was it would be good to have those meetings after we have the goals published so people can like react to them maybe. I think in future years, maybe we do one before, but this year, just because of timing, we have to do it after. So there's a public input meeting in December. I put the special town election on here for the 7th in January. And then we get into like the next kind of big event in February. I thought if we're getting behind this idea of the strategic plans that we just talked about, we could plan to have those be ready in February so that we would have had discussions early in the year to understand what the plan is for the next year. This is also during kind of the election season, so people, can kind of weigh in on that and figure out if they how to participate in that. New candidates can hear about the stuff that if they win, they'll be asked to act upon. So that was the thinking, is the first draft of those is like publicly presented or due in February. And then we're also required to do this joint state of the town address. I thought it would be good to have that after those strategic plans are produced so that you could include some of that information in the address. And then we get into March. And I think this, both of you know better than I do, but I think this is about the time where we start to like look at draft budgets. And so I thought I just put a date in, we pick a date to do budget presentations. So that's school committee, that's town. In March, in April, that's not March. I thought there'd be another public input meeting. April is the budget presentation. May, this is like dual purpose. It's the budget hearing. And I think we usually do that at a town council meeting. So I just like dual purpose that one. And then after that, we get updated strategic plans because the budget has now been approved. So anything that didn't get approved in the budget gets taken out of the plan. It's essentially like a quick revision of the plan to match the budget. And then we do, let's see, what did I have? Oh, and then we look at zoning. We get a zoning recommendation after that, because now you can align zoning to what came through in the strategic plan and the budget. And then lastly, the very last thing we do in the year is the training on all of those decisions. Those go out to the committees so they can start the next year with all the information, and we review the town manager. So there's a lot there, but again, input meetings, strategic plan, budget reviews, budget approval, tweak the strategic plan to match the budget, and then train people on it.
A lot of Friday nights there.
Yeah, well, the key thing is those aren't necessarily meetings.
I know.
Yeah. And I didn't overlap them with council meetings just because, we could certainly include it as an agenda item on the next council meeting, but.
No, it looks good. Looks good. So are you going to put forth a schedule for next year, or is Bill going to do that, do you think?
For town council meetings?
Yeah.
Who normally does it? I actually didn't know the process for that.
Bill usually puts it forward.
Okay, I can connect with him and update
Yeah.
this to reflect that.
One other thing to pop on there, Eric, might be the time where the council gets together with the school board before, the budgetary talks and stuff. You might want to get that on there.
Yeah, it's a joint meeting. Yeah, Kevin's right. A joint meeting with the finance committee, the council, and the school committee. It's usually Isn't it usually in early January? I thought it was like right after the first of the year or something like that.
Yeah, it's like I say, it's, you know,
Mike would know.
early in the budget cycle.
Right. But it's very early on. It's like, you know, we've had them.
Joint.
School committee, yeah.
Okay.
I think what other important things of, might you want to be on that meeting? So right, according to the charter, we got 2 public input meetings, but shouldn't that be more spread out every 6 months as opposed to the
Yeah, I
3
think
months that you have?
that's what I was thinking, like next year, when we do the one for FY '24, I think we do it every 6 months. This year is just condensed because we just haven't done them in the year. The fiscal
Well,
year.
when's the last one that we did? We haven't had one so far this year yet, have we?
What?
No.
A public input meeting?
No.
No,
No.
So we're gonna fail the charter if we don't get at least, what, 2 in this year?
Yeah, I think it's the fiscal year, 2 per fiscal year. If it's 2 per calendar year, I'll squeeze those in. But
Yeah, it's probably gonna go fiscal year, I would imagine, but
Yeah.
again, I can't recall the last one that we've had since I've been back on.
yeah, I don't think I've seen one either. I think they've used some of the town council meetings for them, but I think it's probably to our benefit to have it as a separate thing.
Yeah, I think in the past, when I was on originally, it was its own kind of separate meeting. Sometimes we've done it in an auditorium setting.
Oh, great.
And sit and then kind of chat with that.
Not to interrupt, but just as a FYI, that meeting with the town manager, finance committee, school committee, and you guys this past year was February 1st.
Ah, okay, that's early. Okay, great.
Yeah.
So maybe that's around
It
here.
would be January 31st because we have a council meeting that night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's this one probably. Okay. Okay, I'll add that down here.
And then, again, it's a schedule during one of our meetings, and I think the town manager arranges it, but we get the updates from the, I think Tony gives a report at one point in time, and then we've got the other guys that do the audit, they come on in. I don't know if it needs to be on the calendar or not, but I'm just
Yeah.
trying to think things that come up each year that will come across us.
Okay.
But just if you want to see it all in full view.
Yeah, I think
Other things to add to the calendar.
well, I'd be curious to get your opinion. I think it might be helpful to see as much of it as we can, just so as we're like thinking about scheduling things, you can see
Well, like
density.
certain deadlines come up, certain, timeframes come up, in the budget cycle and stuff, you gotta get them all
Almost done.
squeezed in.
Yeah. Okay. So for this one, do you want to keep this in the committee for another round and we'll get feedback, or do you want to approve it and send it back to the council for real
It might
time?
need a little bit more tweaking, I think, Eric.
Okay.
You might want to get together with the council clerk and maybe with Michael, just to make sure there's no other major dates that are important that should be on this thing. And if
Yeah.
they're good with everything that's on there, we'll bring it back and give it a final approval and send it back up to the council.
Perfect. Okay, I will, I'll send you, actually all the documents that we looked at tonight, I'll send along so you have them. And then I will share this with Michael and with Debbie, get their input and incorporate that input for the next meeting. So that's,
That might be good to me.
do we want to pick a next meeting date now, or do you want to do that offline?
Well, Thursday night like this for me is fine. If you want to do Thursdays, I'm depending on how late, I see patients until 7, so without making it too late for everybody else, I mean, I'll just get on as quickly as I can, but if I keep it at 7 on a Thursday. It works for me. I know I'm doing the other work with my subcommittee for downtown on like a Thursday in the morning.
You
So it's
think-
not gonna be conflict for me.
Maybe like the 17th then, if we look at the 17th. I think that's a Thursday.
That's the Thursday before Thanksgiving.
Yeah,
We know, we're the last week of October.
yeah, we're
That's
just,
1, 2, 3 weeks. I mean, yeah, ideally we're shooting for 4, but because of the holiday, we could do 3.
okay. All right, I'll ask Debbie to send it out.
What do we want to Jen bring back for our next meeting as far as an outline of what?
Oh, yeah, is that enough time, Jen? Or should we look at early December instead? Should we look at December?
I'll make it enough time.
If you can't though, say that, because we can do December 1st too.
No, I'll make it work. It's fine.
Okay. Thank you, appreciate
When
it.
are we meeting again?
So it's gonna be November 17th, 7
Yeah.
PM. And I'll ask Debbie to send out the invites. And the agenda topics then will be the strategic plan, outline our ideas from Jen, and then we'll look at this calendar again, having received feedback from Michael and Debbie.
Okay.
Sounds good.
That's fine.
Awesome. All right, this is good. I guess I would entertain a motion to adjourn then.
So moved.
Second,
All right, roll call vote. Dennis,
yes.
Kevin.
Shirley.
I am a yes as well. Thank you, Jen. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good night, everyone.
Good night. Thank
Bye,
you.
everybody.
Have a good night, guys.